On show 422, Volvo tripling EV production, Tesla's semi-truck interior revealed, and China's e-buses denting oil demand. Well, those stories and so much more coming up on the show today, your Thursday edition of EV News Daily. Morning, good afternoon and good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the show. My name is Martyn Lee. I've been through every EV story that I can find today, and my goodness, there was loads. But you know what? I think I've wrapped it up into 15-20 minutes of stories that will save you time. And this is the stuff you need to know about. Thank you, as always, to myev.com for helping make this show. It is the world's first marketplace for buying and selling EVs. If you're in the USA, you lucky so-and-so. Haven't got it here. I'd love it. Be a great resource to have. Welcome to another Patreon supporter of the show as well, producer Jeremy Roebuck. Jezza. Oh, Ro. Sure your friends call you neither of those. Jeremy Roebuck, thank you so much for being a new producer. These countries have the highest share of EVs was the title of a brand new graph released online today from the World Economic Forum, which I duly retweeted around lunchtime. Electric cars are proving to be a massive hit in certain countries, and the one at the very top of the pile is Norway. Half of all new passenger car sales last year were electric or hybrid. Let me say it again, almost half of all new passenger car sales last year were electric or electrified. This figure outstrips any other country in the world by a huge margin. Neighbouring Iceland came in at second at 19%, Sweden was third at 8%, and the World Economic Forum today saying that buying and running a car in Norway is an expensive undertaking. The recently combined car tax and insurance levy is calculated on the weight of the vehicle, and the emissions can add anything from 29% to 100%. Yeah, you heard me right. Can add 100% of the purchase price. According to the levies, fossil cars are very expensive to buy. EVs are exempt though. For now, at least, they are the prudent choice. The current levels of subsidy are expiring in 2020, and we'll look at what they decide to do. The numbers are smaller, yes. In raw numbers, China will always lead the way in terms of total EVs sold. Over 1 million last year, by the way, but I digress. In terms of percentage of population, Norway leads the way, largely due to progressive regulation, to forward-thinking regulators, and where they go, others follow. Please, Norway, do the right thing and keep EVs affordable. Moving on to how many were sold in Norway of the Tesla Model 3. Now, we are 20 days into March. Not now, but when the data we had were 20 days old. And those data show that Tesla further increased its already fast pace of Model 3 deliveries in Norway, a level of over 2,500 new registrations in the first 20 days alone. Together with the Model S and the Model X, Tesla's registrations are over 2,800 in Norway, a market, like I say, that's pretty small. InsideEVs.com says the previous best for any new EV was just over 2,000, and that was set by the Leaf in March last year. When Nissan launched deliveries of the second generation version in Europe, now the new record holder is the Model 3. There's still 11 days to go though. We're talking about the Model 3 smashing previous records, only 2/3 into the month. There's a huge chance that you could get more than 3,000 registrations, maybe more than 3,000. When we get to the end of the month, we will know. But the Model 3 proving very, very popular this side of the pond if you're listening in the US. Let's stay with Tesla and a quick story about the semi-truck. If you have a spare $250, I certainly don't, but maybe you do, you can get yourself your very own model of every car that Tesla makes. Little die-cast models for $250. You can now own the semi-truck. See, I'm bilingual. In the form of a new die-cast model, but not quite as big as the cars, because then the model would be really huge. This is a 1:24 scale. It's now available on Tesla's online store, according to the US edition of Motor1.com today. The model measures 11.5 inches in length, 6.75 inches tall. According to Tesla, the toy features all of the precise details of the real thing, the Tesla Semi, due to being designed with exactly the same identical 3D CAD data. Now, the video in the link that I'm going to throw into the show notes gives you a solid idea of the details and size. As for the real thing, though, It's going to start at $150,000, boasting a 5-second 0 to 60 time in its largest configuration, doing 600 miles. We talked about this on the podcast yesterday, how the new president of Nikola Motor says 600, that's nothing. We'll do 1,000. Competition's on in the heavy hauling market. And as for the inside of the semi-truck, it was recently showcased at Sacramento, California for the CalStart Advanced Tech Display and the 2030 Clean Transportation Summit. The vehicle was outside, on display, on show, and they'd literally, I think, just turned up with it, because in the pictures, it's not detailed. The screens have fingerprints on, unless people were playing. There's kind of like coffee in the cab and stuff. I think they're working this vehicle hard. Well, the two prototypes they've got running around California, they're working them. They're really putting some miles on, and they're not just out there to be show vehicles. The images that I can see show 2 Model 3 screens. So the screen in the Model 3, which is some people love, some people hate. Well, the non-owners seem to hate it anyway. If you read the online comments, always a dangerous thing. There's 2 of those. You've got the central driving position. Then either side, you've got one of those Model 3 screens. Actually, in these pictures, there is a mysterious third pedal, says Simon Alvarez for Teslarati. In one of the pictures, in the interior, this really small third pedal is behind, well, it's just sort of beside the brake pedal. They've not put any details online about what it could be. Some people speculating a mechanical parking brake. You kind of wonder, with the high-tech nature of Tesla, anything would be mechanical. It'd be an auto-electric brake, surely, but maybe this is just for testing, you never know. The twin Model 3 displays on both sides of the steering wheel are interesting. The right display's got the nav. The left has the settings for the truck, always on display. Seems to feature a dark theme as well, and makes it really easy to see. I'll put a link to Teslarati in the show notes. I mentioned this story at the top of the show. Volvo CEO Håkan Samuelsson admitted the company underestimated the demand for its plug-in cars. But don't worry, Volvo are busy and hard at work increasing production capacity, says Mark Kane for InsideEVs.com today. Now look, currently the Volvo doesn't have enough batteries, or Volvo rather, not the Volvo, but the business Volvo doesn't have enough batteries, motors or components to produce all of the plug-in cars that it could sell. They'll say they have enough of them because they've probably got enough of the ones they ordered. They just didn't realise they could sell so many. Further expansion will increase sales by up to a quarter by the end of this year. That's great news, Volvo. The capacity expected to triple compared to last year's capacity. Should give the Swedish manufacturer room for new models. Håkan Samuelsson said this, and I quote, "We are not happy because we could sell more plug-in cars. We underestimated the demand. We are tripling the capacity for what we had about a year ago to where we'll be at the end of the year." End quote. Look, it's great news. Thank you, Volvo, for admitting you got your early sums wrong. I kind of can't blame them, though. Look, if you are... I try and always put myself in someone else's shoes. It's easy to be a keyboard warrior, an internet commentator, an idiot on a podcast. Who would be that person, eh? And I always try and put myself in someone else's shoes. If you are the CEO, if you're the president, if you are ultimately signing off the check, and you've got people working for you, they rely on stable jobs, taking money home, feeding their family, putting money in the pension, on that stability, would you err on the side of caution, or would you take a risk? Now, we know some companies, Tesla, have that kind of act fast, break things, start-up operation, and they behave like that. But for anyone else, right, who, if you're not in that orbit of being a software startup, if you're a more traditional car maker, you can't blame them for erring on the side of caution. But for seeing the situation, they could sell loads more EVs, reevaluating, doing what they can to get their hands on, which, in fairness, the thing that is most limited in the world right now is batteries for electric cars. So, good on Volvo. Let's go to China. And by the end of the year, 270,000 barrels of oil a day, well, of diesel demand at least, will have been displaced. And it will have been displaced over 250,000 barrels a day of diesel demand, all thanks to one thing: electric buses in China. According to a new report published today by Bloomberg New Energy Finance, that's more than 3 times the displacement by all the world's passenger EVs, a market where Tesla has about 12% of the market, by the way, says Bloomberg. Buses matter more. Why? Their size and their constant use. For every 1,000 electric buses on the road, 500 barrels of diesel are displaced every single day. By comparison, 1,000 pure battery electric cars can hit the road and only take out 15 barrels of oil demand a day equivalent. Commercial vehicles, buses, those vehicles that are on the go all the time, that would normally be using stinky diesel, actually electrify those. You make a huge difference as well. It's not always about the number of cars, it's about the miles driven. And the biggest thing moving the needle at the moment is Chinese buses. And most of those, by the way, made by BYD, a company that's really carved out a space in that bus market. Two more stories. It took a few days, but Tesla has increased the prices of its models, according to Stephen Loveday at InsideEVs.com today. Now, not long ago, Tesla announced it would not close as many stores as it was going to close, but instead bump up the prices slightly of 3% globally on their models, but not including the base model 35K Model 3. Tesla's now moved forward in increasing the prices across its lineup. The average increase is not as high as 3%, though. The average, I mean, if you look at certain models, the $37,000 Standard Range Plus went up by just $500. Other variants have gone up by $1,500. Not the end of the world. And we talk about companies not behaving like typical car makers. Well, the last few weeks of price yo-yoing is another case of really, like, what's the price today? Because tomorrow it could be higher or lower. If you do buy a Tesla, the one thing you do know, you might complain about it online, but you know that if you buy a car today, or you buy autopilot, or you buy enhanced navigation, or whatever the heck it's called today, if you buy anything, tomorrow it could cost more or less. And if it costs more, you can be smug, and if it costs less, you'll probably go on Twitter and bitch about it. Finishing off, Hyundai Motor Company here in the UK have announced the UK pricing for the Nexo. What's the Nexo? It's their second-gen hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. The Hyundai Nexo fuel cell SUV is now available to order from Hyundai Motor UK. Do you want one? Great! Have you got a spare £66,000? That's after the government's plug-in car grant of £3,500. Under the bonnet, the Power Module Complete, the PMC, what it does, it combines oxygen and hydrogen from the high-pressure storage tanks that you sit on, and it creates a flow of electrons. So basically, you're making your own electricity as you drive. Then, those electrons charge the battery on board, and the battery drives the wheels. How big's the battery? Don't get excited. It's 1.56 kilowatt hours. So if your hydrogen runs out, you've got a very short store of electricity to get you to the next hydrogen filling station, which, to be honest with you, you can't move here in the UK for hydrogen filling stations. I mean, everywhere I look, there's another one. Right, getting on to our question of the week. Sorry, tongue in cheek. In case you didn't get the British sarcasm there, tongue was firmly in cheek. I think there must be somewhere to get hydrogen. Moving on to question of the week, thanks to myev.com. Keep your comments coming in on email and YouTube and Facebook comments. It's this: how would you like to be billed for rapid charging when you're away from home? We know home and work is different, but when you're away, when you're on the rapid and you're going somewhere, how do you want to be billed? Contactless, there and then, automated, monthly bill, Apple Pay, let me know. Email me. hello@evnewsdaily.com is my email address. That's hello@evnewsdaily.com. Time for the endy bit. Thank you to 209 patrons of the podcast with Jeremy's addition. Thanks to you, I get to make this show. And as if you're a newcomer to the podcast, by the way, I recently jacked in. Sounds awfully dramatic. I recently made a considered decision to move away from what was a 22-year... I started when I was 18, a 22-year career in broadcasting and radio that I could have happily done for the next 25 years and collected my pension. Been very, very happy. In order to see if I can, career part 2, if I can make podcasts and make a living out of it. That's the plan. Anyway, it's going alright so far. We'll see. We'll see. Fingers crossed. Thank you very much to all the patrons. Thank you to everyone who hits subscribe. To get new ones, if you hit subscribe on YouTube, because we put the audio on YouTube as well, by the way, but also on your podcast app, iTunes, Google Podcasts, which gets better all the time, by the way, on Android, iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeart, the blog at evnewsdaily.com, player.fm. There's a ton of them out there. I try and get the podcast everywhere that it can be. Hit subscribe to get new ones first and free and automatically. If you press subscribe, then it's a weight off your mind. Come and say hi on the socials. That's Facebook, LinkedIn and Twitter. Search EV News Daily. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow. And if you remember one thing, remember this. There is no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.